Everybody, video here for you today. We're going to go back to the ancient Egyptian part of the world. I talked about a site down in the Lake Nasser region about 6 weeks ago. That's where we're going to go again. And I have done maybe videos from about 50 different sites in Egypt, and this is one you cannot go visit today. Not a lot on YouTube about this. That's why I'm covering it today. This is just barely sticking out of the water down here. This is a site, a Qasr Ibrim, and this has a wide-ranging history going back to the 18th dynasty of Egypt at least, and then being occupied through the Christian era and then all the way up until at least a couple hundred years ago. But you can see the ancient ruins down here. There are Coptic churches, there are stelas, inscriptions that go back to the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Moses the first, I believe, was one who put his inscriptions down here. This used to be on a hilltop, but now just barely sticking out of the water here. There was some archaeological work done here in the 1960s and I believe the mid-1980s. Can't be positive how far back the history here goes, but it goes back at least 3,500 years and then continued up until a couple hundred years ago. So probably at least about 3,300 years at least of history on this island here. A lot of historic sites were lost when the Aswan Dam was built. Some of them were relocated. Here's a drawing done in 1838 by David Roberts, and here are the ruins located up at the top of the hill. Today, just barely sticking up out of the water. Here is a pic of these ancient ruins up on top of this hill here. Many different periods of history coming from this place. Here is a good look at how much is sticking out of the water here. You can see this would be kind of a precarious place to visit nowadays. Not much docking facility and kind of rough terrain here. I will leave a few links below, but it says here, located on a high stone outcrop on the east bank of the Nile, the site is the only large ancient settlement in Lower Nubia that was not covered by the waters of Lake Nasser after the construction of the Aswan High Dam. Organic remains from all periods have been incredibly well preserved. However, since the late 1990s, much more of the site has become waterlogged because of high lake levels, and we're kind of losing history gradually and slowly here. Here's a few black and white pics looking at some of the stonework here. Some of this goes back 3,500 years to the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Then some of it is Roman, and then in the centuries afterward, people were still building here. But in this pic, you can kind of see two different types of stonework here. Here is an excellent look at the ruins today. Just kind of in heaps of rubble here. But clearly this is Roman built stuff right here, maybe a little over 2,000, right around 2,000 years old right there. Seems we have some pretty large blocks mixed in here, but it's all kind of a jumbled mess of ruins in here. Here's a black and white photo. There is a Coptic church, a few different churches in here, a few different ruins, reported Sun Temple, and that's a little controversial. But a lot of these ruins were built over, and you can't really get a good fix on what some of the older ones were all about. But these arches are similarly built in Baalbek and places like that. Here you see a column right there. Let's take a look at that. There it is right there. You notice that symbol on there, right there? That is the same symbol I found on Shroud Man's sarcophagus when I found that about 2 years ago. Here's an artifact found at the site. This is called a Roman caliga. I believe that is the term for it. It's kind of like a leather heavy sandal that Roman troops would wear. Still in pretty good shape. I also found this. Oldest surviving manuscript of Latin poetry was discovered at Qasr Ibrim, and that comes from about 2,050 years ago. It says the Roman poet, orator, and politician Gaius Cornelius Gallus in Egypt wrote this over 2,000 years ago. There is a little sideways look at it right there. Here is what they call the Stela of St. Georgios. He was a bishop of Dongeln Cathedral. This symbolism, I wish I could get a little more detail here, but I think the top of that is telling a story there. Now we know this place goes back at least 3,500 years into the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Here is a stela of Amenhotep I. I might have said Moses at the beginning, but here is a stela of Amenhotep I coming from a little over 3,500 years ago. This has been defaced. I can't really make out exactly what is going on here, but it looks like offerings are being offered up. Here is the hand glyph. You notice that one right there. That makes up part of the glyphs down at Abydos. People think they're ancient helicopters or submarines. They're superimposed over each other. But that's one of the glyphs right there, and that denotes the letter D sound, as in dog. Here is one area. This is a little blurry, but there is something inscribed in here. And I will leave these links below, but this stonework appears to be a little more ancient than the Roman period, that is for sure. Here is another find at the site. I'm not positive how old this is, but here it looks like the Egyptian gods are sitting in a row, kind of like they are in some artwork in tombs and in temples. But I've just not seen tapestry work depicting the Egyptian gods like this. Wish I could give you a date on that. Here's a stela from King Tarako. He comes from the 26th dynasty of Egypt. So relatively late period, another period of Egyptians occupying this place. Not sure what is depicted here, but here is the royal scribe doing this stela here, and this probably depicts a military campaign up here. This seemed to be an important place of pilgrimage. Here, people would carve their footsteps in the ground here just to mark the fact that they were there. How far back do the ruins go here? Well, that is a good question. There is evidence of mud bricks at this site, maybe going back to the 12th dynasty, so that's almost 4,000 years ago. But right here, you notice at the bottom, there appears to be large stones and then stuff built on top of it. It's just a good question because we really don't have the exact answers here. But this place certainly has a vast history to it. The Kushites were here, the people that were responsible for the Meroe pyramids down there in Sudan were here. The Greeks were here. You really have a long list of people occupying this place at different times. Christian churches, but you notice in this pic, there are walls here that extended down here. And just kind of lost a lot of this history when the dam was built. I just thought I would talk about this place today. Some pretty interesting history here, some lost history. The Egyptians were here, and they built on a lot of places that were older ruins, so you wonder how far back these go. I just thought I'd talk about this today. Once high on a rocky outcrop, now just barely sticking out of the water. There's evidence that Hatshepsut and Ramses and Tutmosis were also here. Just a good thing to do a video on. Not many people have. Place you can't visit today. As a couple articles said, the history here is just kind of slip sliding away into the water here. I thought I'd talk about this. Seems to be a pretty important place. Way down in Upper Egypt, which is southern Egypt. It's a little confusing, but that is a site. Glad to do a video on. Like to talk about as many sites in Egypt as I can. Still have a lot more to go. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very nice day.